Hi everyone. Hello from the other side of the world. My name is Elad Shechter. I'm a dancer, choreographer, and I'm the manager of this festival that you are about to become a participant in. So I'm the manager of Katamon Dance Group. Katamon Dance Group is a dance organization that we established here in Jerusalem about 7-8 years ago. And our mission is mostly to create dance and develop body culture within the public sphere of Jerusalem and within the different cultures that exist here in Jerusalem. And I'm very, very excited, I have to say, that you're all here and you can be part of this. This is from Jaffa to Agrippa's Festival. This is a festival that is happening annually since 2014. This is the 7th edition of this festival. And the festival is inviting choreographers to create site-specific performances around the Machne Yehuda market area. So it can be in different kind of locations like bars, restaurants, galleries, hotel rooms, and different kind of alternative spaces that we are coming and creating some kind of an intervenence within these spheres and create a dance performance, and we invite the public. So this year was a very strange year. We have 4 pieces, and one of them is the one that you are going to be witnessing soon. Just to say that the artistic director of the festival is Sophia Kranz, and you might see her from time to time. So, shall we begin? I'm gonna put my headset.
Mrs. John F. Kennedy, third youngest of the 29 wives to live in the White House.
Good evening, and welcome to Jerusalem. We've gathered here tonight to go on an exploration of the neighboring Machne Yehuda market. One of the oldest in the region, this market is a meeting place of the old and the new, the past and the present, tradition and modernism, the secular and the religious, life and death. As a girl growing up in a middle upper class neighborhood in North America, I never went to markets. All of our food was purchased in the supermarket. In fact, my mother used to do a full face of makeup before going in. You never did know who you'd meet there. Anyway, it was only when I started traveling as an adult that I fell in love with markets. No matter the city, Cape Town, Johannesburg, Brussels, Amsterdam, Paris, Marrakesh. The outdoor markets tell a story of the people that live in that city. What they like to eat, the spices they use, how they speak to each other and haggle, how their lives beat to their own rhythm. And this market is no exception. As we go along, I ask that you remain close, but not too close. You'll be able to hear my voice through the headphones you've been provided. You can control the volume on a slider on the side. Should you have a question, I ask that you raise your hand. Please refrain from tapping me on the shoulder or any other type of physical contact, as I find that incredibly rude. I repeat, the starting out point for this evening's exploration is this house, the Alliance House. Perhaps not the most glamorous house I've made an entrance from. It's not shiny and it certainly isn't white. It has its own intriguing story. Built over 170 years ago as a school, this building served to shape young minds until the 1940s, when it was transformed into an orphanage that absorbed waves of immigrant children. 10 years later, it returned to being a school and then fell into disarray. It became a squatter's paradise for drug addicts and drunks. It was then refurbished and transformed into an office building, but that did not stand the test of time, and now it is in the hands of the Ruach Hadashah organization, or New Spirit, which provides workspaces for artists, cultural organizers, and community outreach. Shall we go? Our first steps will be to cross this parking lot. Oh, look out for this one. He doesn't seem to be looking. Now, it may not look like much, but this parking lot is the most conveniently located place to put one's car when going on a shopping excursion. And its price reflects that point. The last time I parked my car here, it cost a fortune. In we go. Upon entering the market, we can feel the life, the energy, the vibrance coming from every direction. During the day, you can buy just about anything here, from fruits and vegetables, household goods, a variety of traditional baked goods from different places around the world, like baklava, kyortush, abadi, kanafe, and hachapuri. Down that way, there's a man that has a very impressive stand which sells slushies or barad in about 20 different flavors. It comes with a gummy candy straw with sour sugar. My children love it. I don't love the straw, but anyway. And down that way, there's a man that makes a juice out of a strange fruit called an etrog, which I was told is Jewish in persuasion. Well, it's very sour, but this man assures you that this juice is an elixir of life and will keep you looking young forever. Now, my favorite thing to buy in the market is a little bit of a secret I like to keep. There's a few candy stores lurking around here, and when I first arrived in Israel, this was the only place in Israel where you could find these. Do you know these? After 8? It's a chocolate with mint, but also the time that a lady can drink and not feel improper. After 8. Anyway, would you like one? Now, my grandmother always had a box of these on her tea cart, and I think they're so elegant. Each chocolate comes in its own little envelope, so you don't have to touch anyone else's or worry that they've touched yours. They're lovely, aren't they? Chocolate. Did I miss anyone? Oh, I missed you. Well, just so you know, I'll have these in my purse if you get hungry as we go along. Okay. So, the street that we're on right now is called Etz Haim, or the Tree of Life. And it was named after a yeshiva, a Jewish learning center, which used to be down that way. Now, the Tree of Life Yeshiva played an important role in establishing the market as we know it today. About 100 years ago, Palestinian farmers from neighboring villages would make their way into the market, lay out a blanket or a carpet, and sell their produce for long hours under the sun. The Ottomans, who were in charge at the time, didn't see any problem with that, but the Tree of Life Yeshiva saw an opportunity. They built a row of stalls along this street and rented them out to those farmers, at once elevating the standard of the market and making the yeshiva quite rich. In fact, so rich they were able to move to a nicer neighborhood. Gentrification. So, shall we press on? I want to point out that all of the side streets going off of Etz Haim are named after fruit. There's Hatut, the strawberry, Ha'afarsek, the peach, Hashazif, the plum, Ha'eshkol, the bunch, as in bunch of grapes, Anyway, that original market I mentioned was on Apple and Pear Streets, Hatapuach and Ha'agas. Now we'll find all those streets I mentioned in the market, except for one. Pear Street. On today's map of the market, Pear Street simply cannot be found. And as I came to know this market, I uncovered this mystery. Here we see the slushies I mentioned earlier. Don't those look good? Right? It's so hot out. So, our first clue in the Pear Street mystery is this building. Now, this street is called Yaakov Eliyahu Banai Street. But this establishment is called Ha'agas Echad, Pear number 1. As it turns out, a long time ago, a man named Yaakov Eliyahu Banai moved to Israel from Persia and settled down here with a vegetable store. Over the years, generations of Banais lived in the 2-room apartment above. Banais, do you know that name? Do you know the Banais? Yes? Do you have a favorite Banai? Yes. Oh, interesting. Do you have a favorite Banai? Do you?
Actually, I was a stage worker with the Ehud Banai.
You were? All right, so hang on. I have a nice surprise for you in a second. Well, the Banais are quite popular here in Israel. There's so many of them. Their origins are in this very building. Eventually they moved on from this location, but it was so important to them to keep their heritage in line that in 2000 they petitioned the Jerusalem municipality to rename the street Yaakov Eliyahu Banai, thus erasing Pear Street except for this vegetarian restaurant now owned by a man named Yehezkel.
לבד מעל חנות הירקות הבית ריק עכשיו וחשופים הם הקירות אבל ספוגים הם זיכרונות שלך ריחות של יסמין וניגון ישן של הסעוד המזמין
We're about to enter a different part of the market, the site of yet another untold story or mystery. The Georgian market lies just in there. Now, we would expect to find in the Georgian market some people whose origins lie in the country Georgia. The country, not the state. It's Gruzia in Hebrew, isn't it? Well, we won't find any Georgians in this part of the market. In fact, the name Georgian Market is a cover story for the true origins of this part of the market. As it turns out, in the 1970s, the Jerusalem municipality built this part of the market and handed over the stalls to individuals exiting the prison system as a means to rehabilitate them. Now, there's no official record of this transaction. And in fact, I've heard that there's quite a bit of effort to cover up any remnants of that story. However, in recent years, controversies have arisen about who has the rights to those stalls when the original individuals and owners pass on. In we go. All right then. Just So one of the interesting things about this market is that you really never know what you're going to meet around every corner. Anyway, behind those singing and dancing people is a very interesting building. You can see there's a mural painted out front with a bald man with glasses on. Now, that building goes back to the 1930s and 40s when it was the Casino de Paris, a bar, hotel, and brothel for British soldiers. Now, about 10 years ago, Sha'anan Street, lead singer of the band Hadag Nahash, or The Fish is a Snake, he used to live in the market, and he overheard a tour in which someone told that story of the Casino de Paris and the brothel inside. And he was so excited to hear a secular history within the otherwise religious city that he felt a calling to reopen it. Years ago, together with second-generation market owner Eli Mizrahi, they reopened the doors of the casino. They found all kinds of treasures inside. I'm sure you can imagine. Anyway, this event marked a change in the market, one that we can feel very much tonight. The market, which was a daytime location, became a hub of nightlife. They were the first bar to open, but dozens flooded in right after them. Now, this was met with quite a bit of enthusiasm by some, but resistance by others. In fact, I was told that if we make too much noise in this very spot, a neighbor will throw a bucket of cold water on our heads. We'll see what happens to these folks. In fact, the resistance to the market as a nightlife center continues to be such a point of contention in Jerusalem that on our way in here tonight, Tomer and myself saw a sign that read that drinking alcohol in the market is a sin which will be punished by God. I think I'm willing to take my chances. I mean, after all, how can you separate between alcohol and life? Have you ever noticed that every special occasion in our lives is marked by an alcoholic beverage? If you and I were to share a romantic evening, we'd open a bottle of red wine. If we were to celebrate your engagement, we would call for champagne. On a boys' night out, there would be whiskey or scotch, and girls would probably go for cocktails. If it was a serious night out, we'd have a martini, or shots. Shots. Red wine. Champagne. Martinis, gin, olives, shots. Now, because the market is such a lively point in the city, it has also been the site of numerous terrorist attacks over the years. The first was in 1968, when a car bomb exploded on Agrippa Street, claiming the lives of 12. In 1992, a man stabbed 2 people, and while waiting for authorities to arrive, a local woman named Bila Freund protected his body with her own, saving his life from an enraged crowd. In 1997, the market saw its deadliest attack, when 2 consecutive suicide bombers claimed the lives of 16, injuring nearly 200 others. And in 2002, the market saw the first ever female suicide bomber in Israel's history. Shannon told me that the way that the business owners and the residents of the market know there's been an attack is that a very loud noise is followed by absolute silence. On the day that it happened, I heard a similar sound, a very loud noise, followed by complete silence. You could say it's the loudest noise the universe has to offer. Now, this street is the main drag of the neighborhood and also the market, and it's called Mahane Yehuda Street. And this is yet another untold story in the market. Now, that original market which I mentioned could only take place due to the generosity of a man named Chaim Valero. He owned this empty lot and he allowed the farmers to come in and sell their goods for free. He was the founder of the first Hebrew bank. Now, all this would have been called Valero Market and Valero Neighborhood had it not been for Joseph Navon. He arrived in Jerusalem and saw a need for housing for young families. I believe we're about to get run over. Shall we move over for a moment? Yep. Or not. Well, anyway, when Joseph Navon arrived in Jerusalem, he had a vision to provide housing for families. And so together with Chaim Amzalig, who was also very wealthy, they built 162 homes right here and handed them over to families. Navon decided to name the neighborhood after his younger brother Judah, who had died of tragic circumstances at a young age. And thus, Camp Judah, or Mahane Yehuda, was born. After that, Navon and Amzalig went on to do yet another interesting project. They founded the first Israeli railways, which traveled from Jaffa to Jerusalem. And in fact, when Chaim Amzalig passed, his funeral procession followed that exact same route from their family home, then in Jaffa, today Neve Tzedek, all the way to Jerusalem, where they laid his body to rest. I think a funeral procession is such a beautiful way to send a loved one off, so respectful. After that day, I insisted that the funeral procession follow the exact same path that Abraham Lincoln's had. After all, my husband and Lincoln, two beloved fallen presidents. The CIA said it would constitute a risk for me and my children. But I insisted, and so we walked down the steps of the White House, along Pennsylvania Avenue, to St. Andrew's Church, and finally to the graveyard, where we laid his body to rest.
There was the sound of laughter, and in a moment, it was no more. And so, she took a ring from her finger and placed it in his hands. There was a wit in a man, neither young nor old, but a wit full of an old man's wisdom and a child's wisdom. And then, in a moment, it was no more. And so she took a ring from her finger and placed it in his hands. There was a man, marked with the scars of his love of country, a body active with the surge of a life, far from spent. And in a moment, it was no more. And so, she took a ring from her finger and placed it in his hand. There was a father with a little boy and a little girl, and the joy of each in the other hand. In a moment, it was no more. So, she took a ring from her finger and placed it in his hand. There was a husband who asked much and gave much, and out of the giving and the asking, wove with a woman what could not be broken in life, and in a moment, it was no more. So, she took a ring from her finger and placed it in his hands, kissed him, and closed the lid of the coffin.
you just heard was a recording of a particularly beautiful speech giving at a funeral. On that day, I wore black. Then it was the tradition that widows wore black for 4 months following their husband's death. Their return to a colorful wardrobe marked their return to the market, so to speak. The truth is, I always liked black. In fact, what I'm wearing tonight is a black dress, or what the more fashion-savvy among you may recognize as a little black dress. It was Coco Chanel who first made the little black dress popular. Her version was published in a 1926 edition of Vogue. Right away, women around the world went out to buy their own little black dress. It became a symbol of elegance and sophistication, and for nearly a century, the little black dress has been a staple in every self-respecting woman's closet. I often think about that name, the little black dress. Surely it isn't the smallest, tightest, sexiest dress we own. Why is it that when a woman dresses up to feel grand, she reminds herself to be small? Why is it a little black dress? Why must we constantly remind ourselves to take up as little space as possible? I suggest that instead of calling it a little black dress, we call it a dress and move on. Ooh, good. Now, this part of the market was the second addition to that original market on Pear and Apple Streets. This is the Iraqi market, and it was purchased as a type of collective in 1931. Over the years, the market spread out over more and more territory, eventually coming to what we know today as Mahne Yehuda Market, which extends from Yafo to Agrippa Streets. Now, the Iraqi market is the area in which the most famed restaurants have come up and closed. Over the years, there have been a number of legendary eateries here, such as Sima, Morda, Rahmo and Azura, which we will visit in a moment, and Midnight Steaks, which I was told is the inventor of the Me'orav Yerushalmi platter, or the mixed Jerusalem plate. I've never tried that. Do you like that? Really? You eat that? There are hearts in it, aren't there? Have you had it? A long time ago? It's not really the type of food you would eat with white gloves on. And also, I can imagine doing quite a few things to a heart, like breaking it or captivating it, stealing it away from someone, but eating it isn't exactly my favorite thing on that list. Oh, where's that going?
אם באוויר יש סימנים של יום יפה, ואם הלב מרוב צמא מרגיש חנוק, אני יושב אצל אזורה בקפה, באמצע מחנה יהודה שבתוך השוק. שותה אצלו קפה טורקי, מתוק מתוק, או כוס של לימונד, בטעם פרחים. אזורה בשבילי זה כמו חלום רחוק, כמו סיפור שלא נגמר בהמשכים.
Here we are at Azura restaurant. Azura is legendary in the market. It was founded, as you can see here, in 1952 by a man named Ezra Scheffler. And here I uncovered yet another untold story. Now, people that love the market will either go to one or the other restaurant, Rahmo or Azura. A true market lover will never sit at both. It's kind of like New York and Los Angeles. You have to choose. Does anyone know why that is? It took me quite a bit of digging to find out this one. So, Ezra Scheffler, when he opened this restaurant, claimed that he was bringing an authentic style of Iraqi cooking to the market for the first time. The food is cooked in large enamel pots over very small flames, which you call ptiliot here. They say that that type of cooking gives the food a richer flavor. But in fact, Scheffler's story might not be entirely true, because in the 1940s, he worked as an apprentice at Rahmo, just down that way. And when he opened his own establishment, a black cat crossed between the two families. The conflict was so emotional that for generations forward, people choose a side without even knowing what the conflict was about. I think that's kind of wonderful. Now, over here during the day, there's a very strange type of establishment which you won't find in many other places. Pardon me, cat. Called a hamara, or what I would loosely translate as a gentleman's social club. In here during the day, you'll see dozens of men playing card games and board games like checkers, chess, sheshbesh. Women are not invited into these spaces. It's sort of a place where men can let their hair down and not be worried about female onlookers, their mothers, wives, daughters, girlfriends, mistresses, and what have you. And a peek into here answers kind of an elemental question I think the genders have about one another. What happens when men are left alone? I often think about that, but and I push the thought out of my mind as quickly as it comes in. You know, on the night of my husband's inauguration, Frank Sinatra threw him this huge party. We were in the limousine on the way over, dressed to the nines, I'll add, and he turned to me and said, "Dear, aren't you very tired?" And the truth was, I really was quite tired. It was such an emotional day, so many services and people to meet. So I said, "Yes, dear." And we agreed that the limousine would drop me off at home to sleep in the White House for my first night as the First Lady and take him on to the party. But just about as soon as I got out the door, the thought popped into my mind. Did he ask me if I was tired out of concern, or because he preferred to be there on his own?
Mr. President, Marilyn Monroe.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you. Thanks, Mr. President.
Now, this establishment is supposedly at another Hamara, although I've been told it's way too fancy to be considered one. It's called Jimmy's Parliament, and inside you can find pictures of the owner Jimmy with a bunch of different politicians. Every campaign season or election season, politicians make their way to the market to take a picture shaking the hand of one of the vendors. They believe that makes them appear personable, like they really know the people of the country. In my day, all you needed on a campaign trail was a very nice Chanel suit and a good attitude. But politics today are changing, right? And here we are at our very final stop, Rachmo Restaurant. It is the oldest restaurant in the market. It was opened in the 1930s and serves truly authentic Iraqi food. It was opened by a man named Rahamim Ben Yosef. He had a daughter named Haya. She married a man named Itzik Gil, who is quite an interesting person in Jerusalem. He was orphaned at a young age and bounced around between foster families over the years. He then ran away, enlisted in the army, and served in some of Israel's bloodiest battles. Afterwards, he settled down here with Haya and took on this restaurant as if it was his own. He would spend long hours behind the counter and was known to give away a free meal to anyone who couldn't afford it, having experienced true hunger in his own lifetime. Last year, he passed away, leaving the restaurant in the hands of his two very capable daughters, who were just sitting here a moment ago, Meirav and Liron, who spend day to night upholding the legacy of their family members. You're about to eat a meal that they've prepared for you, and I assure you it will be delicious. But before that, I thought we could raise a glass, shall we? Now, since we're in the market, it's arak, or this is machia. I was told that there's another conflict here between Yemenites and Moroccans. They can't agree who originated this word, machia. Anyway, it's alcohol. You can all take a glass, please. There's almond, pink grapefruit, and lemon. I was told this was the original flavor. You can choose, there's plenty. You can have more than one also. I know they're small. Wait, you're gonna need to grab another one if you already drank yours. Look. In Hebrew, you would say lehaim, to life. But I would offer that we raise this glass to life, to death, to everything between and beyond. Thank you. Lehaim.
She gets too hungry
In you go.
for dinner at 8. She likes the theater
And you can give your headphones
and
back
never
to
comes
John.
late.